Tell us in the comments where in the world you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. It snakes across mountains, deserts, and grasslands for thousands of miles. A colossal dragon of stone and earth, once rumored to be visible from the moon. It is more than just a barrier. It is a testament to human ambition, a chronicle of dynasties, and a silent witness to centuries of conflict and culture. Today, we journey back in time to uncover the epic story of one of mankind's most awe-inspiring achievements: the Great Wall of China. Before the Great Wall, there was no single China. There was only war. For over 2.5 centuries, the land was a fractured mosaic of rival kingdoms, a period historians call the Warring States. From roughly 475 to 221 BC, 7 major states, Qi, Chu, Yan, Han, Zhao, Wei, and the ascendant Qin, vied for supremacy in a relentless, brutal ballet of conquest and betrayal. This was an era of profound transformation, where the old feudal order of the Zhou dynasty crumbled, replaced by a new, ruthless pragmatism. It was the crucible that forged the philosophies of Sun Tzu, whose art of war was not an abstract treatise, but a practical manual for survival in a world of constant conflict. The air crackled with the clang of bronze and iron as armies numbering in the hundreds of thousands clashed across vast plains and besieged fortified cities. Innovations in warfare, such as the crossbow, and the development of large-scale infantry and cavalry tactics, made battles bloodier and more decisive than ever before. In this cauldron of violence, the first walls began to rise. These were not the unified structure we imagine today, but rather disparate, defensive ramparts born of fear and necessity. The state of Qi built a massive wall to fend off its southern neighbors. The state of Wei erected barriers to protect its territory from the ambitious Qin. In the north, states like Yan and Zhao constructed earthen fortifications, not only against each other but also as a first line of defense against a different kind of threat: the nomadic horsemen of the steppes, the Xiongnu. These early walls were primarily made of rammed earth, a technique known as hangtu, where soil, gravel, and clay were pounded into solid layers between wooden frames. They were monuments to division, physical manifestations of the deep-seated rivalries that tore the land apart. Each rampart was a declaration of sovereignty, a line drawn in the dirt, screaming, "This is mine, and you are not welcome." They were scars on a landscape torn by ambition, a prelude to the unimaginable project that would seek to erase these internal borders and draw one single, unbreachable line against the outside world. Out of the chaos of the warring states, one power rose, defined by its military prowess and an unyielding will to dominate: the state of Qin. At its helm was a man of terrifying ambition, King Yingzheng. Ascending to the throne as a boy, he systematically dismantled his rivals, employing a potent combination of military might, espionage, and political cunning. One by one, the other 6 states fell, their armies shattered, their royalty extinguished. In 221 BC, the centuries of bloodshed finally ceased. Yingzheng stood victorious over a unified land, the first to ever hold such power. He cast aside the title of king as insufficient for his accomplishment and declared himself Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. His vision was not merely to rule, but to remake the world in his image. Unification was his creed, and he pursued it with relentless zeal. He understood that military conquest was only the beginning. To truly bind the disparate peoples into a single entity, he needed to standardize the very fabric of their lives. He decreed a single currency, abolishing the myriad coins of the former states. He standardized weights and measures, ensuring that a pound of grain in the south was the same as a pound in the north. Most critically, he mandated a single, unified script, allowing his decrees to be read and understood across his vast domain. Even the axles of carts were standardized, so that all wheels would fit the same ruts in the new imperial road system. But a shadow loomed on his northern frontier. The Xiongnu, a formidable confederation of nomadic tribes, were masters of the steppe, their horse archers capable of lightning-fast raids that terrorized border settlements. The old, disconnected walls of the former states were no match for them. Qin Shi Huang envisioned a solution of breathtaking scale. A single, continuous barrier, a 10,000-li-long wall that would seal the northern border of his empire. This was to be more than a defense. It was a declaration. It was the ultimate act of standardization, drawing a definitive line between the ordered, agricultural civilization of China and the chaotic, nomadic world beyond. It was a project born of a singular, authoritarian vision, designed to protect and define his new empire for all time. With the empire unified and the northern threat identified, Qin Shi Huang turned his grand vision into a monumental command. He entrusted the colossal task to his most capable general, Ming Tian. The order was simple in concept, yet staggering in its implications. Connect the existing fortifications of the former northern states and extend them into a single, unbroken defensive line stretching from the coast to the desert. To achieve this, Meng Tian was given command of an army of laborers that dwarfed any military force of the era. The workforce was a cross-section of the new empire, composed of over 300,000 soldiers, but supplemented by an immense contingent of conscripted peasants and convicts, numbering perhaps in the millions. These were men torn from their fields and families, or criminals paying their debt to the state through grueling servitude. The conditions they faced were beyond brutal. The wall's path snaked across some of the most inhospitable terrain imaginable, over treacherous mountain ridges, through arid deserts, and across desolate plains. The logistics of supplying this mobile city of workers with food, water, and tools were a constant, desperate struggle. They toiled under scorching summer sun and through bone-chilling winters, exposed to the elements and the constant threat of nomadic raids. The construction itself was a testament to raw human effort. The primary method remained rammed earth. Workers would erect wooden frames and fill them with layer upon layer of local soil, which was then pounded relentlessly with heavy logs until it was as hard as stone. Where the wall crossed mountains, they quarried stone, shaping and lifting massive blocks with primitive technology. The human cost of this endeavor was astronomical. It is a dark but enduring legend that the first Great Wall is the longest cemetery on Earth. While not literally built from bones, countless workers perished from exhaustion, starvation, disease, and construction accidents. Their bodies were often buried in the shadow of the very structure they were building, their lives sacrificed for the emperor's ambition. This monument of mud and bone rose with astonishing speed, a testament not to technological marvels, but to the Qin dynasty's absolute control over its people and its chilling capacity to mobilize human labor on an unprecedented and ultimately tragic scale. The Qin dynasty, forged in fire and maintained by fear, proved to be as brittle as it was powerful. Just a few years after the death of Qin Shi Huang, his empire crumbled, and the Great Wall he had willed into existence fell into a state of neglect. From the ashes of this collapse rose a new, more enduring power, the Han Dynasty. For its first few decades, the Han adopted a policy of appeasement towards the northern Xiongnu known as the Heqin policy. This involved sending lavish gifts of silk, liquor, and even Han princesses as brides to the Xiongnu chieftains in an attempt to buy peace. However, this strategy was not only costly and humiliating, but also largely ineffective, as the raids continued intermittently. The entire strategic calculus changed with the ascension of Emperor Wu of Han, one of the most consequential rulers in Chinese history. Reigning for over 50 years, from 141 to 87 BC, Emperor Wu was a man of immense ambition and martial spirit. He abandoned the passive Heqin policy and launched a series of massive military campaigns designed to crush the Xiongnu threat, once and for all. His armies pushed deep into the northern steppes, driving the nomads from their ancestral lands and securing vast new territories for the Han Empire. This aggressive expansion created a new strategic imperative. The newly conquered lands, and more importantly, the nascent trade routes that would become the legendary Silk Road, needed protection. The old Qin wall was repaired, but Emperor Wu's vision went much further. He initiated a massive new phase of construction, extending the wall over 500 kilometers westward into the forbidding Hexi Corridor and the Gobi Desert. The construction techniques adapted to the harsh new environment. In the desert, where good earth was scarce, Han engineers devised an ingenious method of layering reeds and tamarisk branches with sand and gravel to create a surprisingly durable structure. But the Han Wall was more than just a barrier. It was a complex, integrated defense system. A chain of watchtowers, built within sight of one another, served as a rapid communication network, using smoke signals by day and fire by night to relay information about enemy movements. Forts and garrisons were established along its length, housing troops and supplies, transforming the wall into a fortified highway that projected Han military and political power deep into Central Asia, securing the flow of commerce and culture that would define an era. With the dawn of the Han Dynasty, the Great Wall was transformed from a purely defensive bulwark into a dynamic artery of empire, pulsing with military, economic, and cultural life. Its most critical new role was that of the guardian of the Silk Road. As Emperor Wu of Han pushed Chinese influence westward, opening up lucrative trade routes that stretched from the capital Chang'an to the Mediterranean, the wall became the essential shield for this nascent global commerce. The Han extended the wall far to the west, deep into the unforgiving terrain of the Gobi Desert. This new section, known as the Hexi Corridor, was a lifeline for the caravans laden with silk, spices, and jade. The wall here was not always the imposing stone structure of popular imagination. In the desert, it was often constructed from rammed earth, reeds, and tamarisk branches, a testament to Chinese ingenuity in adapting to the environment. Along this extended frontier, the Han established a series of heavily fortified garrisons and watchtowers. Fortresses like the famous Yumenguan, or Jade Gate Pass, and Yangguan became the control points for all traffic moving in and out of the empire. These were not mere military outposts. They were bustling hubs of activity, where merchants paid taxes, soldiers drilled, and officials recorded the flow of goods and people. The watchtowers, placed within sight of one another, formed a sophisticated communication network. Using smoke signals by day and fire by night, a message could travel hundreds of kilometers in a matter of hours, alerting the garrisons to any nomadic raids threatening the precious cargo of the caravans. The wall was the backbone of a system that projected Han power and secured its economic prosperity, ensuring that the wealth of the world could flow into the heart of the Middle Kingdom, protected every step of the way from the unpredictable dangers of the northern steppes. The fall of the mighty Han Dynasty in 220 AD plunged China into nearly 4 centuries of division and strife. This period, known as the Era of Fragmentation, saw the rise and fall of countless kingdoms and dynasties, from the 3 kingdoms to the chaotic 16 kingdoms. In this maelstrom of civil war and internal power struggles, the Great Wall, once the proud symbol of a unified empire's strength, was largely forgotten. Its maintenance required a centralized government, with vast resources and a singular strategic vision, all of which were absent. As dynasties fractured and warlords carved out their own domains, the northern frontier became a secondary concern. The immediate threat was not a distant nomadic tribe, but the rival army in the next province. Consequently, the garrisons that once manned the wall were withdrawn to fight in civil wars, their supplies diverted, and their ranks thinned by desertion. The watchtowers, once alight with signal fires, fell dark and silent. Without constant repair, the forces of nature began their relentless assault. Harsh winds and scouring sands of the Gobi eroded the rammed earth sections, while freezing winters and summer rains crumbled the brick and stone. Entire segments of the wall collapsed, becoming little more than earthen mounds, their strategic purpose lost. The Jade Gate Pass, once a bustling customs checkpoint, became a desolate ruin, a ghost of its former imperial glory. For the nomadic peoples of the steppe, the wall was no longer an obstacle, but an irrelevance. They migrated, raided, and even settled south of the crumbling lines with little opposition, often becoming key players in the ongoing conflicts within China itself. The wall stood as a silent, decaying monument to a lost age of unity, its disrepair mirroring the deep fragmentation of the empire it was built to protect. History often presents a profound sense of irony. The Northern Wei Dynasty, which rose to power in northern China during the 4th and 5th centuries, was founded by the Tuoba clan of the Xianbei people, precisely the type of northern nomadic group the original walls were built to repel. Having conquered and established their own powerful state, they adopted many Chinese customs and administrative systems, and soon faced a familiar problem: defending their new domain from other, more aggressive nomadic confederations pressing from the north, particularly the formidable Rouran Khaganate. In a remarkable turn of events, the former outsiders became the new wall builders. The Northern Wei emperors initiated massive construction projects, but their strategic focus had shifted. The old Han-era walls were in many cases too far north or too dilapidated to be useful. Instead, the Northern Wei constructed new fortifications, often creating inner walls further south, designed to protect the core of their state around the capital, Pingcheng. One of the most significant of these was a wall stretching over 1,000 kilometers east from the Yellow River Loop. This was not a mere repair job. It was a grand undertaking, requiring immense logistical organization and manpower. Hundreds of thousands of laborers, including soldiers and conscripted peasants, were mobilized for the task. The construction was a clear statement. The Northern Wei were no longer a nomadic steppe power, but the new defenders of the northern Chinese heartland. Their wall was a physical demarcation of their transformed identity. It was a barrier meant to consolidate their territory and protect their agricultural base from the very lifestyle they themselves had once led. The wall of the Northern Wei thus represents a fascinating chapter in the structure's history, a period where the line between us and them, between defender and invader, became blurred and was ultimately redrawn by the very people the wall was once meant to exclude. After centuries of division, China was forcefully reunified in 581 AD by the Sui dynasty. The first Sui emperor, Emperor Wen, and his successor, Emperor Yang, were driven by a powerful ambition to restore the glory and centralized power of the Han. A crucial part of this vision was the reconstruction and expansion of the Great Wall. The primary threat had evolved. The nomadic Xiongnu were long gone, replaced by the powerful and expansive Guk-Turk Khaganate, which dominated the Mongolian plateau. To secure their newly unified empire from this formidable northern power, the Sui emperors embarked on one of the most extensive and rapid wall-building campaigns in history. Over the short, 37-year span of the dynasty, they ordered no fewer than 7 major construction projects. This was a monumental undertaking, symbolizing the awesome power of the reunified Chinese state to mobilize resources on a scale unseen for generations. The Sui efforts focused on repairing older sections from the Northern Qi and Northern Wei dynasties, as well as extending the wall system in the west to control the Ordos region. However, this grand reconstruction came at a staggering human cost. Historical records suggest that millions of laborers, including commoners, soldiers, and convicts, were conscripted to work on the wall. Conditions were brutal, the labor was relentless, and mortality rates were appallingly high. The immense strain placed on the population to build the wall, alongside other massive projects like the Grand Canal and costly military campaigns, bred widespread resentment and discontent. While the Sui Wall was a formidable military achievement that laid the defensive groundwork for the succeeding Tang dynasty, its construction was a key factor in the Sui's own downfall. The dynasty's ruthless pursuit of grandeur exhausted its people and its treasury, leading to a massive rebellion that brought its brief but impactful reign to a violent end. In the year 41 BCE, the Roman world was a chessboard for giants. Following the defeat of Caesar's assassins at Philippi, Mark Antony, the charismatic and battle-hardened general, became the undisputed master of the East. His task was immense: to stabilize the provinces, raise funds for his legions, and consolidate his power. It was from this position of authority that he summoned Egypt's queen to Tarsus, in modern-day Turkey. The official charge was to answer for her ambiguous role during the recent civil war, accused of aiding the conspirators. For any other client ruler, this would have been a moment of terror, a summons to grovel before a Roman conqueror. But Cleopatra was no ordinary ruler. She understood that this was not a trial, but an audition. She did not rush to Antony's side. Instead, she made him wait, building anticipation and asserting her own importance. When she finally arrived, it was not as a nervous vassal, but as a living goddess. She sailed up the river Cydnus in a magnificent barge, a vessel that seemed pulled from myth itself. The sails were dyed a royal purple. The oars were cast from silver, moving in time to the music of flutes and lyres. On the deck, under a canopy woven with gold, Cleopatra herself reclined, dressed in the robes of Venus, the Roman goddess of love, fanned by attendants disguised as cupids. The air was thick with the scent of exotic perfumes burning on the shore. The entire city of Tarsus emptied to witness the spectacle, leaving Antony sitting alone in the public forum. The power dynamic had been shattered before a single word was spoken. Antony, the conqueror, was instantly captivated. He who had summoned her for judgment was instead invited to be her guest at a banquet of unimaginable splendor aboard her ship. Over the next several nights, she dazzled him, not only with her opulence, but with her intellect, her wit, and her multilingual fluency. She was not merely a seductress. She was his political and intellectual equal. The charges against her were forgotten. By the end of her stay, a powerful alliance was forged, one sealed by personal chemistry and mutual ambition. Antony had found the partner and the treasury he needed to fund his dreams of Eastern conquest. Cleopatra had secured her throne and a Roman protector, who saw her not as a subject, but as a queen. By 34 BCE, the alliance between Antony and Cleopatra had deepened into a formidable partnership, both political and personal. They had 3 children together, and Antony spent more and more of his time in Alexandria, a city whose culture and splendor far outshone the grit of Rome. After a moderately successful military campaign against Armenia, Antony chose to celebrate his triumph not in Rome, as tradition demanded, but in the heart of Cleopatra's capital. This decision was a calculated and profound insult to Roman sensibilities, but it was merely a prelude to an even more audacious event: the donations of Alexandria. In the city's grand gymnasium, a massive crowd gathered to witness a spectacle of unprecedented scale. Upon a silver platform, 2 large thrones of gold were placed. On these sat Antony and Cleopatra, not as a Roman general and a client queen, but as divine monarchs. Beside them, on lower thrones, sat their children: Alexander Helios, Cleopatra Selene, and Ptolemy Philadelphus, along with Caesarion, Cleopatra's son, by Julius Caesar. Antony then rose to speak. He declared Cleopatra Queen of Kings, a title that placed her above all other rulers in the East. He proclaimed Caesarion to be the true legitimate son and heir of Julius Caesar, a direct challenge to his rival in Rome, Octavian, Caesar's adopted son. Then came the donations. Antony, acting with the authority of a world conqueror, proceeded to distribute vast territories to Cleopatra and their children. Armenia, Parthia, and Media were gifted to Alexander Helios, Cyrenaica and Libya to Cleopatra Selene, Phoenicia and Syria to Ptolemy Philadelphus. These were not just titles, they were the blueprint for a new Eastern empire ruled by a new dynasty, with Alexandria as its glorious center. The message was unmistakable. Antony was turning his back on Rome, creating a rival power base and a Hellenistic monarchy with his Egyptian queen. In Rome, Octavian could not have asked for a more potent piece of propaganda. The donations were framed as the ultimate betrayal, proof that Antony was no longer a true Roman. He was a man enslaved by a foreign sorceress, giving away lands conquered by Roman blood to her illegitimate children. The donations of Alexandria were a magnificent declaration of power, but they were also a fatal miscalculation, providing Octavian the moral justification he needed to turn the Roman world against them. The donations of Alexandria lit a firestorm in Rome, and Octavian fanned the flames with masterful skill. The looming conflict with Antony would not be won by legions alone. It had to be won first in the minds of the Roman people. Thus began one of history's most effective and vicious propaganda campaigns. Octavian, the cool and calculating politician, painted his struggle against Antony not as another tragic civil war, but as a righteous defense of Roman values against a foreign existential threat. The target of his venom was not primarily Antony, but Cleopatra. She was depicted as a monstrous figure, a decadent, power-mad Eastern witch who used sex as her primary weapon. She was the harlot queen who had bewitched and emasculated their once great general, Mark Antony. Octavian's propaganda relentlessly exploited Roman xenophobia and misogyny. He spread tales of Antony's subservience, claiming he acted as Cleopatra's eunuch, indulging in drunken orgies and bizarre Eastern rituals while abandoning his Roman duties. This narrative transformed Antony from a rival into a traitor, a man who had gone native and forgotten his heritage. The masterstroke of Octavian's campaign came in 32 BCE. In a shocking breach of law and religious custom, he forcibly seized Antony's will from the Temple of the Vestal Virgins and read it aloud to the Senate and the public. The contents were devastatingly effective propaganda. The will officially confirmed Caesarion as Caesar's son, left enormous legacies to his children by Cleopatra, and, most damningly, requested that his body be buried not in Rome, but beside Cleopatra in Alexandria. The Roman public was horrified. This was incontrovertible proof of Antony's betrayal. He had renounced his ancestors, his city, and his identity. Antony and Cleopatra tried to counter this from Alexandria, minting coins that showed their two profiles together, a symbol of their ruling partnership. But their messaging was drowned out. Octavian had successfully framed the narrative. When he finally persuaded the Senate to declare war, it was not against Antony, a move that would have been too reminiscent of civil strife, but against Cleopatra alone. Octavian was no longer a rival triumvir. He was the champion of Rome, leading a crusade against a foreign enemy who sought to destroy their way of life. By the autumn of 31st BCE, the war of words had given way to a war of warships. The fate of the Roman world converged on a quiet gulf on the western coast of Greece, near the promontory of Actium. On one side was the vast fleet of Mark Antony and Cleopatra, numbering some 500 ships. Many were massive quinqueremes, floating fortresses with bronze rams and towers filled with archers. On the other was the fleet of Octavian, commanded by his brilliant and innovative admiral, Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa. Agrippa's fleet was smaller, but his ships were lighter, more agile Liburnians, crewed by highly disciplined and experienced sailors. Antony's plan was to use his larger, heavier ships to smash through Octavian's line. But Agrippa refused to engage directly. Instead, he used his ship's superior maneuverability to outflank and harass Antony's lumbering giants, turning the battle into a chaotic and grinding stalemate. For hours, the battle raged under the hot September sun, with neither side gaining a clear advantage. Then, the pivotal and most debated moment of the battle occurred. A squadron of 60 Egyptian ships, with Cleopatra's flagship among them, suddenly hoisted its sails, broke through the melee, and headed south, away from the fight. Was it a prearranged plan for a strategic withdrawal, or was it a flight of panic? The answer is lost to history. But what happened next is certain. Mark Antony, seeing Cleopatra's vessel depart, seemed to lose all will to fight. He abandoned his own flagship, transferred to a smaller, faster ship, and pursued her, leaving his massive fleet and his loyal legions leaderless. The effect on morale was catastrophic. Though his forces fought on bravely for several more hours, their command structure had collapsed. One by one, the ships were overwhelmed by Agrippa's tactics, set ablaze by fire arrows and grappling hooks. By the end of the day, most of Antony's fleet had been captured or sunk. His formidable land army, stationed nearby, watched the disaster unfold at sea. A week later, abandoned by their commander, they defected to Octavian. The Battle of Actium was an overwhelming and decisive victory for Octavian. It was not just a military triumph. It was the catastrophic end of a dream. For Antony and Cleopatra, their hopes of a shared Eastern Empire were now sinking in the blood-red waters of the Ionian Sea. The fall of the Mongol-led Yuan dynasty in 1368 and the rise of the native Han Chinese Ming Dynasty marked a profound shift in the geopolitical landscape of East Asia. The early Ming emperors, like the formidable Hongwu and his son Yongle, were aggressive expansionists. They pushed the Mongol remnants far back into the northern steppes, establishing a sense of security that hadn't been felt for centuries. However, this offensive posture was costly and difficult to maintain. By the mid-15th century, the political winds in Beijing had changed. A new generation of Confucian scholar officials, wary of military adventurism and its immense financial drain, advocated for a defensive strategy. The turning point came in 1449 with the Tumu Crisis, a catastrophic military disaster, where the Zhengtong Emperor was captured by the Oirat Mongols. This humiliation shattered the illusion of Ming military supremacy and exposed the vulnerability of the northern frontier. The debate was over. A static, fortified defense was now seen as the only viable path to long-term security. It was in this crucible of fear and pragmatism that the Great Wall, as we know it today, was conceived. The Ming Dynasty would embark on the most ambitious and expensive public works project in human history. This was not to be a simple earthen rampart like the walls of previous dynasties. This was to be a stone dragon, a formidable barrier of brick and rock, stretching for thousands of kilometers. It was envisioned as the ultimate demarcation line between civilization and barbarism, between the settled agricultural world of the Han Chinese and the nomadic horsemen of the steppe. The project would consume the state's resources for over a century, involving millions of laborers, soldiers, and artisans. The wall became more than a defense. It was a physical manifestation of the Ming worldview, a statement of permanence and imperial power etched into the very mountains and deserts of northern China. Its construction reflected a deep-seated psychological need to create order, to define borders, and to hold back the chaotic forces that perpetually threatened the empire from beyond. The construction of the Ming Great Wall was a monumental feat of engineering, logistics, and sheer human will. Unlike earlier walls, which were primarily made of rammed earth, the Ming builders utilized far more durable materials. In the mountainous regions east of Beijing, they quarried massive blocks of granite and limestone, fitting them together with meticulous precision. In the flatter, loess-covered plains to the west, they perfected the art of brick-making. Countless kilns were built along the wall's path, firing millions upon millions of gray bricks that were stronger and more weather-resistant than any before. The mortar binding these materials was a marvel in itself, a mixture of lime and sand often fortified with sticky rice flour. This unique organic-inorganic composite created an incredibly strong bond, so effective that in many places, weeds still cannot grow between the stones. The logistical challenges were staggering. Transporting these heavy materials up steep, treacherous mountainsides required immense ingenuity. Laborers used simple tools like hand carts, pulleys, and carrying poles. In some cases, they formed human chains to pass bricks and stones up a slope, while in others, they used goats and donkeys to haul supplies along narrow paths. The design of the wall was a sophisticated system of defense in depth. The main wall itself was typically 20 to 30 feet high, wide enough at the top for several horsemen to ride abreast. It was punctuated every few hundred yards by watchtowers, which served as observation posts, signal stations, and living quarters for the troops. These towers rose high above the wall, offering commanding views of the surrounding terrain. Between them, beacon towers were strategically placed on high peaks to create a rapid communication network. Using smoke signals by day and fire by night, a message could travel hundreds of miles along the wall in just a few hours. This intricate network of ramparts, forts, towers, and garrisons transformed the northern frontier into a hardened, integrated defensive line, a testament to the Ming Dynasty's organizational power and engineering prowess. For the hundreds of thousands of soldiers who manned it, the Great Wall was not an abstract symbol of imperial might. It was a harsh and unforgiving reality. Life in a garrison tower was a monotonous cycle of duty, punctuated by moments of sheer terror. A soldier's day began before dawn, with drills and weapons practice in the shadow of the wall. The primary duty was surveillance, long, grueling hours spent scanning the vast, empty horizon for any sign of movement, for the telltale dust cloud of a nomadic raiding party. They were the eyes and ears of the empire, and a moment's inattention could spell disaster for communities deep within China's heartland. The conditions were brutal and varied wildly with the seasons. In winter, Siberian winds howled across the plains, bringing bone-chilling cold that could freeze a man at his post. Summers were scorching hot, with little shade or relief. Isolation was a constant companion. Garrisons were often located in remote, desolate regions, far from any major settlement. Contact with the outside world was limited, and loneliness could be as formidable an enemy as any Mongol warrior. To sustain these remote armies, the Ming government established a system of military agricultural colonies, or tuntian, near the wall. Soldiers were expected to farm the land during peacetime, growing their own food to reduce the immense logistical burden of supplying the frontier. This created a strange dual existence for the men, who were both farmers and fighters. Despite the hardship, a unique culture developed among the garrison troops. They were bound by a shared sense of duty and camaraderie, finding solace in stories, games, and the simple rituals of daily life. They were the living component of the stone dragon, the human sinew and muscle that gave the great fortification its purpose and its strength, standing as the first and last line of defense for the Ming world. For over 2 centuries, the Great Wall served its purpose, repelling countless raids and providing a crucial buffer for the Ming Dynasty. However, by the early 17th century, the dynasty was rotting from within. A succession of weak emperors, rampant corruption among court eunuchs, and devastating famines had crippled the empire, sparking widespread peasant rebellions. As the Ming weakened internally, a new and formidable threat coalesced to the northeast. The Jurchen tribes, later known as the Manchus, were unified under the brilliant chieftain Nurhaci and his successors. They were a disciplined and highly effective military force that repeatedly tested the wall's defenses, probing for weaknesses and occasionally breaching its lines. The wall, for all its strength, was only as strong as the men who defended it and the government that supplied them. As the Ming state faltered, soldiers on the frontier went unpaid and unfed, and morale plummeted. The final act came in 1644. While the Ming military was preoccupied with the massive internal rebellion led by Li Zicheng, who had captured Beijing and declared a new dynasty, the Manchus waited patiently on the other side of the wall. The fate of the empire rested on the Shanhai Pass, the first pass under heaven, a critical fortress where the Great Wall meets the sea. It was commanded by the Ming's most capable general, Wu Songui. Caught between the rebels who had captured his family in Beijing and the Manchu army at his gate, Wu made a fateful decision. He chose to ally with the Manchus, opening the gates of the Shanhai Pass and allowing their army to pour into China. The Great Wall was not conquered by force. It was undone by betrayal. The Stone Dragon had held the line against external threats for generations, but it could not protect the dynasty from its own internal collapse. Its last stand was not a heroic battle against a foreign invader, but a quiet, tragic opening of a gate, symbolizing the end of an era. The fall of the Ming Dynasty did not come from a massive army overwhelming the Great Wall in a climactic battle, but from a combination of internal rebellion and a fateful decision at its most critical gate. The Manchus, the very people the later Ming sections were designed to repel, had been consolidating their power north of the wall for decades under leaders like Nurhaci and Hong Taiji. They had become the formidable Qing dynasty in waiting. Inside the wall, the Ming Empire was rotting from within, crippled by corruption, famine, and the vast peasant rebellion led by Li Zicheng, who captured Beijing in 1644. The Ming Emperor Chongzhen took his own life, leaving a power vacuum. The final ironic act was performed by the Ming general Wu Songui, who was garrisoned at the formidable Shanhai Pass, the first pass under heaven. Faced with the choice of surrendering to the rebel Li Zicheng or aligning with the Manchus, he chose the latter. He opened the gates of the Great Wall, allowing the Manchu army to pour through and crush the rebellion. The Manchus, however, did not leave. They seized the mandate of heaven and established the Qing dynasty, which would rule China for nearly 3 centuries. Suddenly, the Great Wall, this colossal monument of division, was no longer a frontier. The Qing Empire expanded far beyond it, incorporating the Manchu homeland, Mongolia, Xinjiang, and Tibet into a vast, multi-ethnic state. The wall became an internal feature, dividing one part of the empire from another, its military purpose utterly extinguished. The Qing rulers had little interest in maintaining a structure built to keep their own ancestors out. Garrisons were withdrawn, patrols ceased, and the slow, inexorable process of decay began. Without constant repair, watchtowers crumbled, ramparts were weathered away by wind and rain, and its stones became a free quarry for local farmers building homes and animal pens. The wall transitioned from the empire's primary defense to a silent, decaying relic of a fallen dynasty's fears. Its obsolescence was total. It was now just a long, serpentine scar on the land, a testament to a frontier that no longer existed. As the Qing dynasty itself began to weaken in the 19th and early 20th centuries, the Great Wall entered a new phase of its existence, one defined by foreign rediscovery and domestic neglect. For centuries, it had been a fading feature of the Chinese landscape, but now Western explorers, missionaries, merchants, and adventurers began to penetrate the Chinese interior, and they brought the story of the Wall to a global audience. Through their journals, sketches, and early photographs, they constructed a romanticized and often mythologized image of the structure. It was portrayed as a monolithic, continuous wonder, a testament to the mysterious and ancient power of a reclusive empire. It was during this period that the persistent and entirely false myth that the Wall could be seen from the moon began to take hold. A fiction that perfectly encapsulated the West's exaggerated perception of its scale. While foreigners marveled, for many Chinese intellectuals and reformers during this century of humiliation, the Wall was anything but a source of pride. It became a potent symbol of failure. It represented a stagnant, isolationist policy that had ultimately failed to protect the nation. The Wall had not stopped the Manchus, and it certainly offered no defense against the technologically superior Western powers and their gunboats during the Opium Wars. It was seen as a monument to a futile defensiveness, a backward-looking mindset that had left China vulnerable. This psychological devaluation was mirrored in its physical state. Neglect accelerated into active destruction. Sections were intentionally demolished to make way for railways and roads, the infrastructure of a modernity the Wall seemed to stand against. Its bricks were plundered for new construction projects. In the vast, arid landscapes of the West, entire stretches were swallowed by the encroaching desert, their earthen ramparts eroding into little more than indistinct mounds. The Wall was not yet the unified national symbol it would become. It was a fragmented ruin, a picturesque backdrop for foreign adventure stories, and a painful reminder for the Chinese people of an era of weakness and decay. The 20th century would witness the Great Wall's most profound transformation. Its rebirth from a crumbling relic of dynastic failure into the paramount symbol of modern Chinese nationalism and endurance. This ideological reconstruction began in the early days of the Republic. Sun Yat-sen, the father of modern China, invoked the Wall as a symbol of Chinese sovereignty. However, it was under the leadership of Mao Zedong and the Communist Party that the Wall was truly cemented in the national consciousness. Mao's famous poetic line, "He who has not reached the Great Wall is not a true man," transformed a visit to the Wall from a mere sightseeing trip into a patriotic pilgrimage, a rite of passage for every true citizen. The Wall was no longer the mark of a failed feudal empire. It was now portrayed as a monumental achievement of the Chinese working people, a testament to their strength, perseverance, and unity in the face of external threats. This powerful new political narrative demanded a physical manifestation. The new government initiated the first large-scale, state-sponsored restoration projects in centuries. Sections near Beijing, most famously Badaling, were meticulously rebuilt, not just to preserve them, but to create a showcase for the new China. These restored sections became a stunning backdrop for state functions and a must-see destination for foreign dignitaries, projecting an image of timeless strength and cultural depth. The Wall was now a political instrument, a symbol of national identity wielded on the world stage. This process, however, was not without its complexities. The decision to restore sections to a pristine, almost theme park-like condition raised questions about historical authenticity. The focus on the Ming-era brick walls of the east often overshadowed the older earthen ramparts in the west. The sheer scale of the structure, stretching over thousands of kilometers, made comprehensive preservation an impossible task. Nonetheless, the shift was decisive. The Great Wall had been politically and culturally rebuilt, its stones now mortared with a new meaning: the unbreakable spirit of the Chinese nation. Today, the Great Wall stands as a global icon, a UNESCO World Heritage Site that transcends its original purpose to occupy a unique space in the human imagination. It is no longer a military frontier, but a frontier of tourism, scientific research, and cultural identity. Every year, millions of people from around the world flock to its restored sections, like Badaling and Mutianyu, experiencing a carefully curated version of the wall. They walk on its ramparts, pose for photographs in its watchtowers, and marvel at its scale as it snakes over the dramatic mountain landscapes. This immense popularity, however, creates a stark contrast with the wild wall, the vast, unrestored sections that crumble silently in remote parts of the country. Here, the wall faces modern threats far different from nomadic horsemen. Climate change brings more extreme weather, accelerating erosion. The pressures of development, from mining to new highways, threaten to sever its continuity. The footsteps of unregulated tourism and the scourge of graffiti wear away at its fragile, authentic state. The challenge for today is one of balance: how to accommodate the millions who wish to experience this wonder without loving it to death. Meanwhile, the wall continues to be a frontier of discovery. Archaeologists and historians, armed with satellite imagery, drones, and ground-penetrating radar, are constantly refining our understanding of its true extent and complexity. They are piecing together the story of the diverse fortifications, realizing it was never a single line, but a deep, layered defense system. The wall's cultural role also continues to evolve. It is a ubiquitous presence in film, art, and literature, a symbol that can represent anything from steadfastness and ambition to isolation and tyranny. Ultimately, the Great Wall's future lies in its meaning. It is a physical reminder of the universal human tendency to define us versus them, to build barriers against the unknown. Yet, it is also a testament to what humanity can achieve through collective will over centuries. The eternal frontier is no longer about keeping people out, but about preserving this complex legacy for a global future.